Okay, looks like we're ready to go. In this video, we're going to be talking about amino acids. We're on page 197 of the workbook. The big idea that we'll see is that amino acids are the building blocks of protein, much in the same way that monosaccharides are the building blocks of carbohydrates, or fatty acids and glycerol are the building blocks of triacylglycerols. Amino acids are the building blocks of proteins. What we're planning to talk about in this video, the outcomes for this day, some of them we're crossing out, again, because of our shortened semester, but specifically we'll talk about this, a couple from the reading, which is discussing the physical properties of amino acids, distinguishing between essential and non-essential amino acids, and then we'll be just kind of superficially discussing the effect of pH on solubility of amino acids. The more detailed discussion involves these two outcomes that we have had to cross out. The final thing, predicting products for how amino acids undergo condensation, that'll happen in the next video, the proteins video. So we won't see that here. We will be focusing on these learning outcomes. Physical properties of amino acids. Amino acids, and again, this is from your reading, so this ought to be review. Amino acids are all solid at room temperature. So they're not gas, they're not liquid, these are all solids at room temperature. It's possible that they can dissolve in water, depending, and that again gets at this idea of solubility, but they are solids at room temperature. What their structures look like, I'd like to remind you that you know a little bit about the functional groups involved. The amino part of the word refers to the amine functional group. And the acid part of that name, amino acid, the acid part refers to carboxylic acid. And as I said, you know what those functional groups are. Carboxylic acid looks like this, and the amine functional group looks like this. You learned how to classify amines as primary, secondary, or tertiary amines. So depending on if these three attached groups are hydrogen or an organic group, then you get primary, secondary, or tertiary amines. Either way, that an amine functional group will be part of the amino acid structure, and a carboxylic acid functional group will be part of that amino acid structure. If I scroll up to the top, I listed one example of an amino acid, and what I'd like you to notice is, sure enough, I see this carboxylic acid. That carboxylic acid functional group is present in the structure, and I see the amine functional group. Both of those functional groups are present on the same molecule, and in fact, they're attached to the same carbon. That's the defining characteristic of an amino acid. We'll be looking at more examples on the back page. So as far as physical properties of amino acids, this is the big one that I'd like you to notice. They are all solid at room temperature, and their structure is, it means that the structure includes a carboxylic acid functional group and the amine functional group. So that's what we wanted to say about physical properties, mostly noticing that they are solids at room temperature. Essential versus non-essential amino acids, that's very much like what we saw last time with fatty acids. Some fatty acids are essential, some are non-essential, and the difference is that the non-essential fatty acids your body can produce. Your body can make these. You don't need to have these in your diet because your body can just make them for you if you need them. Essential, your body cannot make. And since your body cannot make them, that means they must be present in your diet. So just like with fatty acids, some amino acids are non-essential. Doesn't matter if it's in your diet or not, but other amino acids are essential. You must include them in your diet or your body will be deficient in those amino acids. You don't need to memorize which are which, but you definitely need to understand that general concept. In terms of the effect of pH on the solubility of amino acids, and I'm going to remind you that next video we'll be seeing that that's also true for proteins. So I'm going to sneak that in right here. Really, we're not going to go into detail because we've had to skip a couple of outcomes because we missed a couple of weeks. So I want you to recognize that that the solubility of amino acids depends on pH, and that's really the big idea. Solubility depends on pH. Many of the proteins in your body are present as enzymes. You want those enzymes, for example, to be water soluble. They're in the fluids of your cells, for example. You don't want them to be chunks. You don't want them to be insoluble. You want them to be soluble. But their solubility does depend on pH. So if your blood plasma pH, for example, is not tightly regulated, then the solubility of those dissolved proteins is impacted. That in fact, is one of the biggest consequences from a pH imbalance in your body, is how it impacts the solubility on proteins and the amino acids that they're built from. So solubility depends on pH. I'm just going to summarize what I just said. If your blood pH is not regulated, you'll see lots of problems from this. You'll have lots of problems if proteins that were supposed to be soluble become insoluble. So I'd just like you to recognize that the solubility is dependent upon pH. What we'll spend our time on, so we've just touched on these three. I'm going to show you examples of structures, and then in our next video, we'll be looking at how they react. The back page, so page 198, I'd like us to take a look at. This page lists the 18 or so, 16 or so amino acids that are common in our diet. And what I'm wanting to highlight here, the main takeaway from this page, page 198, is the commonality among all the structures of these amino acids. So there's a few things I'd like you to notice. One is that each amino acid has its own name, of course: glycine, alanine, valine, leucine, isoleucine, and so on. Notice many of them end with an INE, and you already know that INE indicates amine. They all will have amine because amino acid. Some of them end in the word acid: aspartic acid, glutamic acid. Those two have acid, and we'll see in a moment why. And these last three end in ene. So of these amino acids, you'll first notice that they have a name. The second thing, though, I'd like you to notice is each of them has a 3-letter abbreviation. I'm going to have you ignore the 1-letter abbreviation that goes with it. We won't be using that. You can ignore that 1-letter abbreviation, but do notice the 3-letter abbreviation. Glycine is abbreviated GLY, capital G. Alanine is abbreviated capital ALA, and so on. So this is an indication when you see a 3-letter abbreviation that indicates to you that we're talking about an amino acid. You don't have to memorize what the abbreviations stand for, but if I show you an abbreviation such as GLN, I'd like you to say, hey, that must be an amino acid, and then you know something about that. What do you know about that? The common structure that I want you to notice, I'm going to put this up at the top. The common structure is this: amino acids are organic. So let's just start right off the bat with carbon. Because they're organic, we know that carbon is the central element of that molecule, of that structure. Carbon, as you know, makes 4 bonds. So I'm going to write the 4 bonds. And then what I often like to say is this: say this word out loud in your head: amino acid. I'm reading it from left to right, amino acid. It's written left to right, amino acid. And so that is the left to right order in the structure. This is not called an acid amino, it's called amino acid, which means that the amine is first and the carboxylic acid is second. Amino acid. You know what amine is, right? It's nitrogen making 3 bonds. And you know what carboxylic acid is. It looks like this. So every structure, the structure of every amino acid, you'll write by saying, okay, carbon in the center because it's organic. Amino acid. So we're reading and writing left to right. Amino acid. Amino acid. The remaining two bonds need to be completed. One of those remaining two bonds will always be as simple as it could possibly be, which is H. That's the simplest possible group we could have, and that's what it is. So amine carboxylic acid, H. All of the structures on this page have this base structure, basic structure, amine carboxylic acid, H. The fourth position is what I'm going to call R. It's the rest of the molecule. That's the only thing that's different from one amino acid to the next, in the R, as we've been calling it, stands for the rest of the molecule. But in the specific case of amino acids, it's usually referred to as the side chain. So whatever R is, you would say that's the side chain for that amino acid. Let's look at a few examples. Here's glycine. Sure enough, amine carboxylic acid, H, and the side chain. In this example, glycine, it's the simplest amino acid because the side chain is as simple as possible. It's an H. How about alanine? Amine carboxylic acid, H, and the side chain. Here, the side chain is a methyl. Valine, amine carboxylic acid, H, and the side chain. So you don't have to memorize structures of amino acids, but it will definitely benefit you to recognize the common pattern of bonding in these molecules. Carbon makes 4 bonds, amine carboxylic acid, H, and the side chain. As long as you know what the side chain is, you can draw the structure of that molecule. And we will end this video with doing an example. The after class practice problems. Page 199, of course, is on the outcomes that we've crossed out, so we're not talking about that in this semester. But if I flip that paper over, I see the after class practice problems. And again, many of them don't apply to this spring 2020 semester because we've had to cross a few things out of our course. But this is the after class practice problem I'd like you to take a look at. It asks you to draw the amino acid whose side chain is, and then there's the structure. As soon as you see amino acid, you remind yourself carbon is the center of the molecule. Carbon makes 4 bonds. It will always be amine. Here's a general amine. Carboxylic acid. H. This is always what it will look like. The only thing we don't know is what's the side chain, and that's what we'll be told. What is the side chain? CH2OH. So then I would draw a CH2OH. This is an amino acid, and if you were to look on the sheet that we just were working with and I asked you what is that amino acid we just drew, you would look around until you find the one that has that side chain, CH2OH. That's serine, and you could either name it by its full name or you could name it by its 3-letter abbreviation. I am going to go back to the page we were on just a moment ago here because I just now realized I forgot to put these H's in. Those H's belong there for the amine side chain, or I mean the amine group. Amine, carboxylic acid, H, and the side chain. Amine, carboxylic acid, H, and the side chain. What we'll see in the next video is how does this amino acid combine with another amino acid, and then what's the product of that. We'll see that in the next video, and I hope to see you there. Thank you.